boy, what a year it's been. I just released a video about my childhood obsession with Sonic and the lore of escapism in a queer world. I had been wanting to make something about Sonic and knew that this was going to be the end of year project from the beginning of the year, partially to cash in on Sonic 3, but also partially because I genuinely wanted to unpack some stuff. But the journey really was about finding out what the essay was going to be. The original idea was to do some kind of Sonic retrospective, but for one, I don't think people necessarily want that. Two, when I did get to watch the Sonic series, each and every one of them, I realized I really have to be pulling on teeth to get anything substantial out of them. I'm not entirely sure when it was, but I eventually realized that the essay was going to be about autism. Sonic's been known to have a very neurodivergent audience for a long time, and I had long suspected I was on the spectrum, but this year was when I really went forward and went through the system of getting that diagnosis. Shockingly difficult for me, actually. Everything was so expensive, the process was surprisingly convoluted, and I realized if I really did want that closure, I was going to have to be very deliberate about it. The big seed of what became the essay, though, was during the assessment when the psychiatrist started asking me about my love life and plans for the future. It was there that it first clicked to me that my queerness and neurodivergence were probably connected. I had already suspected, but it's crazy how many things I recontextualized when I finally got that proper confirmation that I was on the spectrum. All my little quirks, my obsessiveness, my anxieties, all of my stories that I've ever written could be retroactively seen as explorations of the neurodivergent experience, always stories about navigating strange worlds and or societies, and having trouble being understood by people. The queerness also seemed to fall neatly in line with that, just acting in a way that falls out of whatever societal construct exists because I truly do not get it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how many, really almost all of the queer people that I know in life are also neurodivergent in some way, though not all of them are diagnosed. People I know with clear traits of ADHD, autism, I know one bisexual, bipolar, BPD, but not all of them are out of the closet either. That's the next thing. A lot of what this is speculation because, again, the process was so expensive and convoluted. I only really sought out my diagnosis because, like I've said a few videos ago, I think my mental health was really taking a hit because the things required of me in this world were increasingly becoming difficult because of the way that I am. Like, retroactively, I'm able to see that even something like learning to drive was more difficult for me than maybe other people because of my anxiety and autism. My first instructor was just terrible. And it was because there was a clear communication barrier. I call her terrible because as an instructor, I feel like it's kind of your job to be able to figure your students out. Like, my second instructor clocked from pretty early on that my trouble driving was because of my head. Something that seems so obvious now, but anyway. Also in regards to queerness, this video could also be seen as a response to what is still, unfortunately, my most viewed video, where I rightfully gave everyone reason to suspect that I was somewhere on the ace side of life. And while it's nice that that community embraced it, I also kinda hated that because there was an actual damn point to the video and I feel like a lot of people were missing it because of the label that they had assigned to its maker. Now, I'm a person who has always struggled with being categorized. I don't like being put in a box of someone's imagination. Unfortunately, right now, as a sentient voice, I am literally speaking to you all through a box. I don't think the label completely fits what's going on with me, which is why I've always had a sort of chaotic, unstable relationship with the whole thing. The point of this is that I realized that both neurodivergence and queerness were just deviations from the invisible norm that our society is structured around. If I was to propose an actual theory, it would be that because your mind is structured differently from that of neurotypical people, it makes you less prone to blindly performing gender because you're a glitch. You're able to see, and I know this is especially true in autistic people, you're able to clearly see how much of a performance the entire social world is built from, and it literally feels unnatural to you to perform as others do. But what you do with that disconnect is the next thing. One thing that I did get into, and it would have been interesting to get a little bit more into in the video, was that there is also a connection between inceldom and neurodivergence. That former friend I spoke about in the video is actually another person who I always suspected was both neurodivergent and queer. I am like 99.9% sure he has ADHD. Like, I'm so sure he has all the traits of ADHD. Like, it was comical how short his attention span is, and he was always trying his hand at every little hobby or project he ever did. But at the same time, the man would forget a 3-hour-long conversation that you had with him just the other day, where he talks about how life is meaningless and we're all going to hell. And of course, I'm the exact opposite. I remembered every single one of our conversations, and I'd remember everything he said, and it would weigh on me, and he'd just go on like nothing. Also, I strongly suspect he's bi, and directed that energy into making gay jokes and performing homophobia. Like, all the cliches. You know, I grew up with misogynistic ideas, and I had a little Jordan Peterson-ish phase, but I didn't quite become an incel. But the thing is, I definitely had a misanthropy arc. I even suspect if I was just a little bit more heterosexual, I would have had an incel arc of my own. And it is because of that expectation, living in a world of ideas and concepts and following rules and social cues you don't really get, society disappointing and or betraying your expectations, that can build a lot of resentment that needs to be put somewhere. The trouble with incels is that they look for cheap answers, and the easy one that the propagandists have found is woman. Blame the woman and the woke left. Or that the world has fallen and God will return to defeat your ops for you. In the case of my misanthropy arc, I just blamed collective society. Which is actually not too far off, because now I've found words like capitalism and patriarchy, which are systems which affect society. But at that time, I just blindly hated the idea of people and groups in general. When people form in groups, they become more of a representation of homogeneous ideas. And my relationship with groups had always been misery and exclusion, because I was too different and queer to fit into those groups. That's changed, again, because I've found the right words to describe the particular ideas and how they affect ideas that circulate among those groups. Groups are important, because you live in a world of people and we do need each other. On that point, yes, this was my first collaboration.
Oh, wow.
I had emailed a few people, actually, creators I knew who also fit the categories that I was looking for, neurodivergent and queer. But I was cutting kind of close to when I wanted to finish up this video. Usually when sending out emails, you need to follow up a few times to get people to respond. So I was really shocked when Jesse responded after the first time, and relatively quickly after too. The interview ended up getting pushed a little bit late into the process. I'd already edited down most of the video, so it was a matter of finding the parts of the interview that were the most relevant to what I had, and performing a bit of surgery on what I had. The full thing is on my Patreon though, so you can see me utterly quaking in my boots. I was so nervous, like you don't believe. I was so nervous. But their responses were so wonderful and insightful. Now, you need to understand, Jesse Gender is one of probably the creator who I'd cite as being the most directly influential to the evolution of my thought process about the concept of queerness. As I rattle on about way too much, my upbringing was very fundamentalist and religious one. The concept of non-heteronormativity was largely not even a thing for most of my life, even though I guess I did always fall short of that standard. But even after my mind eased and opened itself to the idea that gay people were not sinful and going to hell, I still did not understand the concept of transness. But boy oh boy, Jesse's videos, I can say, have been quite directly useful for the evolution of my appreciation of that whole conversation and interrogating gender in general. to get them to agree to be in this thing and directly talk about and articulate a lot of the ideas that I was pondering about and trying to communicate here was so... it felt almost spiritual. Like, the definition of queerness that was articulated was like... it perfectly matched my thinking. I was shocked, but in a way more articulate, because Jesse is someone who has actually sat down and read about and pondered upon these ideas way longer than I have. Like, that's the big thing, and why I, even though it is so far out of my comfort zone, it's probably the most far out of my comfort zone thing I've ever done, actually. I know I need to do more of these interviews, because, yeah, there are people who are thinking and feeling the things I am feeling, or are better acquainted with the ideas that I am thinking about and would like to explore, who can articulate them way better than I ever could, and that is why we need people, you know? Also, my face, it's been in videos before, I just never quite draw attention to it. In this one, I just figured if I was doing the interview, I'd rather not be some mystery man talking to Jesse. I want to be a human. And also, I think it thematically fits with the themes that I'm talking about in regards to performance and material reality versus imagined reality. Another time I showed myself was in my Wolf of Wall Street video, where I had a little bit in the middle where I interrogate myself, and it was to be an artistic choice to show how I'm not above the criticisms I'm laying against the film. One of my friends actually saw it in the first hour of upload and remarked it was kind of beautiful. Including myself, here was to be something akin to that. Plus, I just plan to do more things in the future that will require me to show up publicly and do things with cameras. I don't really have an actual reason to not show my face, so I said, screw it. Though a little pompous thing here, it could be said that the things I revealed to my audience in my videos have been more revealing than any physical face or features of mine. You all know more about me than half the people who see me every day. Another interesting thing, there were 2 drawing/animation sequences that actually existed in my mind for years. Both of them very expressionistic, kind of abstract. I had been looking for an excuse to draw these images since I conceptualized them maybe 3-ish, 4-ish years ago. Back when I was really trying to get in my surrealism bag, but also becoming increasingly disillusioned and frustrated with people not understanding my art. I more or less quit making this kind of thing, but this video and this topic gave me an excuse to sort of execute them in an interesting way, which I didn't have to explain because the video itself and my voice is giving all the context. One of them, the knife piercing the black void and all the colors spilling out, was supposed to be a sort of visual representation of the plurality of reality and how violent an attack on status quo can feel, but no one's hurt. There's also a sort of psychosexual thing going on there. The tear in the void is shaped a certain way, and the color spilling out in threads is very, I don't know, almost appears strange body fluids. The other one, which actually sort of has a name, Sunday Morning, is supposed to be a sort of representation of church boys. I think the whole sequence kind of explains it. It's a sort of feeling that it's them versus a fallen, chaotic world, but you know, there's more of them than they think. Could be an uplifting message until you consider their position on an elevated surface above the rubble, almost looking down on it. Makes a person wonder who's responsible for the chaos. Then the image gets mutated and it becomes overwhelmingly clear how many of them there are, almost clouding the sky, clouding each other, until it becomes a mess and, you know, maybe they're the chaos. Maybe they've lost the plot. It gets clouded and distorted because for centuries these people have created a power structure which almost fetishizes the idea of being against the world. We've been in the end times for 2,000 years now. So there's that drawing I put in the video so I wouldn't have to explain it. What else did I want to say? Oh yeah, this year sucked. It wasn't good. It was kind of bad actually. but good things happened anyway. I definitely had my share of life updates and canon events. All of them, I think, though, are ultimately important and good for me. That's it, I suppose. Good day and good year.
Fine, chocolate shit like a diver. Cut on my dog, he step out of line. Chlorophyll, water, and ashwagandha. Some of these feelings is hard to describe. Put on some weight, now I feel like a lineman. I'm in the bay like a Raider, a Niner. I broke the cookie, the fortune was fine. I'm not okay, but I'm gonna be alright.